If you're in the horse world, you know the feeling. You feel like you're stuck on a merry-go-round of expert advice, right? One day it's one thing, the next day it's something completely different. Well, today we're going to dig into why that frustrating, confusing inconsistency happens so often.
I mean, it's the classic situation, isn't it? You get a vet, a saddle fitter, and a trainer to look at your horse, and you walk away with three totally different diagnoses and three different plans. It's enough to make your head spin. So, what is going on here? Why does this keep happening? I bet some of these sound pretty familiar. One saddle fitter says your saddle's perfect, the next one says it's the root of all evil. Your horse's issue is in his back? Wait, no, it's actually in his neck. It's a training problem. Oh, but the vet thinks it's a physical limitation. If you're nodding your head right now, trust me, you are not alone. This is a pattern we see everywhere.
So you have to wonder, how can so many smart, dedicated, experienced professionals look at the very same animal and see such different things? Well, that's the first piece of what we're going to call the inconsistency puzzle. Now, here's the first big clue. This isn't just about one expert being right and another one being wrong. The problem isn't their skill level. It's actually a much deeper structural issue that's kind of baked into the very foundation of the equine industry. And that leads us to the absolute core idea of this whole explainer. To really get it, we have to stop zooming in on the individual experts and start zooming out to look at the bigger picture, the system that they're all operating in. There's a name for this. It's called systemic fragmentation. Just think about it for a second. You've got all these brilliant specialists, the vet, the farrier, the trainer, the body worker, but so often they're working in their own little silos. Each one has their own toolkit and their own lens, and they get this incredibly detailed but ultimately incomplete picture. You know, it's kind of like trying to solve a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, but every person is only allowed to look at their one single piece. They can describe that piece perfectly, the colors, the shape, every little detail, but since nobody can see how their piece connects to all the others, no one ever sees the whole picture.
So, what does this fragmentation actually look like on the ground in the barn? Let's break down how three different experts can look at the exact same system, your horse, and walk away with three different conclusions that are all kind of right, but also all incomplete.
Okay, so this is where you can really see the blind spots. The saddle fitter? They're an expert on that critical interface between the saddle and the horse's back. But what they might not see is the full context of how the rider's weight is actually loading that system during a really tough workout. The therapist, they're focused on the tissues, right? The muscles, the fascia, but they might not know what's causing that strain in the first place. And then the trainer, they're looking at the output, the performance, the behavior, but they might be totally unaware of a physical issue that's holding the horse back. Let's make this super clear with a quick case study. This is a perfect example of what happens when all those little puzzle pieces just don't get put together. So picture this horse that's just a bit resistant. Step one, the saddle fitter comes out. Finds some uneven pressure, makes a few adjustments, the horse feels a little better. Step two, a therapist comes, finds a tight back, does some body work. Okay, another slight improvement. And finally, the trainer notices the horse is still inconsistent and changes the training program. Each person helped a little, but the root problem, it's still there. And here it is, the big aha moment. The real culprit wasn't just the saddle, or just the muscle, or just the training. No, it was a chain reaction. It started with an asymmetrical rider, which created uneven loading on the horse's back. That was then amplified by the saddle, and this whole dysfunctional pattern was being practiced and reinforced every single day in training. See? Each expert saw a piece of the problem, a symptom, but nobody saw the whole system. All right, so if working in these separate silos is the problem, what on earth is the solution? Well, this is where we need to make a really important shift in our thinking, moving away from looking at isolated parts and toward understanding the integrated system. And that shift in thinking, it's huge. We're moving from the old way, which is fragmented, partial, and always reactive, always putting out fires, to a new way that's integrated, holistic, coherent, and proactive. The goal here is to understand the entire horse and rider system so we can prevent problems before they even start. This new way is called a systems-based approach, and really all it is a shared framework that helps everyone connect the dots. It gets all the different practitioners to see how things like the rider's load, the horse's physical adaptation to that load, and its recovery time aren't separate issues at all. They're all interconnected parts of one dynamic system. So, what this approach really does is create a common language. It gets everyone, the vet, the trainer, the farrier, the saddle fitter, to agree that they are all working on the exact same system. They start using consistent terms, they start thinking about how things change over time, and this is the most important part. It gets them talking to each other. So that's all the theory, but what does it actually mean for you, standing in the barn aisle trying to do the best for your horse? Let's boil this all down to your big takeaway.
Now, the key message here is not to fire all your experts or to stop trusting them. Absolutely not. The big takeaway is that you have a new and really powerful role to play. You can become the systems manager for your horse. You can be the one person who connects all the dots and make sure every specialist is communicating and seeing that bigger picture.
There's a quote from the source material that just sums this up perfectly. This does not eliminate the need for judgment, but it provides a clearer context in which that judgment can be applied. In other words, this systems approach doesn't replace expertise. It actually makes that expertise even more powerful by giving it the full context it needs to be effective. So the next time you're facing one of those frustrating problems, just ask yourself this. Are you treating the parts, the saddle, the sore muscle, the behavior, or are you ready to step up and start managing the entire system? Because that shift in perspective could make all the difference for you and your horse.